Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Tonight we examine the results of Turkey's historic referendum. After a divisive campaign, the country has voted to move from a parliamentary system to an executive presidency. Supporters say it's a win for democracy that'll make the country safer, stronger and more united. Yet almost half of those who voted said no. They say the changes will erode checks and balances and concentrate too much power in one man's hands. The main opposition party, the CHP, is demanding the results be annulled until some of the ballots are recounted, alleging voter fraud. European election observers say the vote fell short of international standards, but Ankara accuses them of bias. So, what comes next? What will the results mean for Turkey? Was this democracy in action or a step towards authoritarianism? We'll put these questions to our panel of guests from across the political spectrum. But first, this report from Randolph Nogel.
Even before the final results were announced, supporters were already celebrating. The momentum of months of campaigning for the evet or yes vote reached a crescendo as 25 million Turks backed a new constitution. The ruling AK party, along with its nationalist MHP party ally, made the case that a presidential system would be more efficient, in particular to address Turkey's varied security threats.
Our nation needs stability. This constitutional amendment will bring stability, will bring power, and will bring, of course, the development, but with the existing system, we can't do it.
But almost as many higher or no voters went to the polls as those saying evet.
It is a drastic change more because of the state of society and politics in Turkey. That state is pretty much fragmented. Usually the decisions are very positive for almost half of the country and very unpopular with the other half.
Major urban population centers like Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir all voted no, whereas more sparsely populated rural areas said yes.
The main issue with the Turkish society amidst all these transitions is that the identity of the country is an issue that Turks have not been able to come to a consensus.
What was seen by many as a polarizing campaign has ended in an equally divided result. It could call into question the constitutional mandate that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had hoped for. And it's one that also reveals the split in Turkey over the man himself.
Televizyonlarda filan aç tavuk kendini buğday ambarında sanarmış ya. Bu neticeyi küçümsemeye gayret edenler var. Boşuna uğraşmayın. Boşuna uğraşmayın.
President Erdogan has told detractors of the vote to not waste their time. The main opposition party, the CHP, has called for the referendum to be annulled. To some, the vote for a new constitution was a vote on President Erdogan's leadership. But opponents of the new system say that the ruling party's campaign tactics were divisive.
Saying no is identified as being terrorist. People are scared. People are scared to say what they really think. What Turkey needs is a better functioning parliamentary system, because the better they find the chance to be represented in the parliament, the better people will feel they belong to this country and their voice is, considered in the policy.
Under a new constitution, President Erdogan could now hold power until 2029, if elected 2 more times. And while some fear a consolidation of power, others hope it will improve the lives of the country's diverse people. Randolph Nogel, the Newsmakers in Istanbul.
Well, to discuss the results, I'm joined now from Ankara by Utku Çakırozer. He's an MP with the main opposition party, the CHP. And with me here in the studio is political analyst Ceren Kenar. Also joining me is Professor Emre Gönen. He's the director of the European Studies Master's Program at Istanbul Bilgi University and an expert in Turkey-EU relations. Thanks all of you for joining us. Let us start with you, sir, in Ankara, Utku Çakirozer. Your objections to the referendum and your problems with it. Do you have strong evidence that there were problems in the vote, or is this merely sour grapes?
Imran Garda, first of all, good evening to you and your dear guests there in Istanbul. It's a great honor for me to be here with you. Thank you for inviting. When we were talking about our objections, it's not limited to our party, but I can see that many other parties and politicians who were supporters of the no camp during the referendum campaign are also sharing most of those objections. And it's not limited to the parties of the no camp, but as you were also, just in the beginning of the program, you mentioned the OSCE final report about the campaign and the voting day. As you see, it is so, it's such a pity. It's so, for a citizen, for a politician of Turkish origin, it is so sorry. I feel so sorry that OSCE observers have found this election as being not satisfying the international standards. So first of all, of course, our objections start with the campaign. We didn't have, the no-sayers didn't have the fair, the equal and fair opportunities with the yes-sayers.
Sure, but you still went along with the referendum.
Yes.
You still went along with the referendum. Allow me to come in here. Last night, following the reaction from the CHP, you said, we don't want to go with the Anadolu agency's figures. Let's wait for the YSK. Let's wait for them to come out with their figures. Now, one day on, when Sadi Güven says, quote, the disputed ballots in Turkey's referendum are legitimate, this is the head of the election board, why don't you believe him?
Yeah, of course, but as I was saying, first of all, the campaign, we didn't have equal opportunity and fair opportunity, both in terms of reaching to public sources, to media coverage, and also especially all the yes-sayers were sort of supported by the state and the government, but on the other hand, most of the no-sayers were banned from campaigning free in a free
okay, that's one point. And sorry to rush you, sir. Make the other point, please, if you don't mind, because I've got to get to the other guests. If you don't mind, please.
Sure. Coming to your second question regarding, our main objection regarding the voting is that the Supreme Board of Elections have changed the rules of the game when during the game was on, and they said that they took a decision to accept the unstamped envelopes and ballot papers to be valid, which is actually not the case during the last 3 or 4 elections.
Okay, and let me ask you, so they accepted the stampless vote envelopes as valid. Let me ask you, are you going to continue to fight this? Are you going to take legal action?
Yes, of course. Okay. Of course. We see our party is going to apply to the Supreme Board of Elections, but also, so it is in a way difficult to determine which of them were unstamped or not, because of the decision of the Supreme Board of Elections, it is nearly impossible to find now in which ballot boxes there were problems.
Okay. So you will continue to fight this, and again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. I've got to keep this moving on. Let me ask you, Emre Gönen. There are those who are saying that this is a victory for democracy and stability. That's actually the main editorial in Daily Sabah. Do you see it that way as well?
Oh, stability, we had political stability for the last almost 15 years. We have a single party government which good day, bad day has won all the elections and has secured.
In 2015, they couldn't form a coalition for, what, 5 months there to have new elections?
Exactly, they could have, but they did not want. I mean, the opposition could not get together, and the ruling party refused to form a grand coalition with the CHP. At the end, the elections were repeated by the will of the President of the Republic, and then again a single-party government was formed with a large majority in the parliament. So whether we see it as a staunch and sustainable stability, or whether it's much more, how would I say, fragile situation is debatable. But we have basically voted for this referendum, whether we wanted to keep the president with executive powers for at least for 2 terms to come, or not.
So for you, it's about the president?
It is chiefly about the president.
Ceren, let me ask you, those who believe this is a slippery slope to authoritarianism, those who believe that the checks and balances are going away from the system, are they right or wrong?
Well, there are serious questions about the current system in that sense. The parliament, the role of the parliament is reduced. And Turkey's judiciary was always politicized, but with this change, it becomes even more so.
But he chooses 4 and Parliament chooses 7 judges, right?
Yes, but still, I mean, in Turkey, the latest incidents, including the failed coup, demonstrated that the most urgent need of Turkey right now is a strong judiciary, as well as a strong checks and balances system. So the thing is, this kind of a system, there are strong objections, strong criticisms against this current proposal. And the thing is, one needs to keep in mind that in 2019 elections, we don't know who will be elected as the president.
But this is a good point.
So AKP can be the victim of its own success.
That's fascinating, because that leads me to my final question for you, Sir Utku Çakırozer. Why don't you accept the results, run your candidate in 2019, build up a strong bit of political momentum over the next 2 years, and maybe your president can have all those powers that you're complaining about in 2019?
Sir, Imran Garda, we're looking at this as a principle of democracy rather than whether we would be having all these power which we find undemocratic and which we believe it would lead to authoritarian single-man regime. So we always made it explicit during the campaign that we wouldn't accept this, not for only Mr. Erdogan, but even for our chairman, Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, or any other personality. Even if he was alive, the founder of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, was to ask for this kind of powers without any, as Ceren Hanım has mentioned, without any checks and balances, and she mentioned strong, and I would add, independent and impartial judiciary.
Okay, sir, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much, Utku. Stay where you are, Ceren and Emre. Let's turn our focus now to the global reaction to the referendum. How will the constitutional changes affect Turkey's relationship with Europe and the world? Yvette McCullough reports.
This referendum campaign proved to be passionate, divisive and controversial, both inside and outside Turkey, driving a wedge between the country and some of its European allies. Germany and the Netherlands both blocked yes rallies for Turkish expats from taking place, citing security concerns. And Dutch authorities barred 2 Turkish ministers from addressing overseas voters. But Turkey took it as bias, claiming the nations were supporting the no vote, leading to protests and a war of words.
Sizin şu andaki uygulamalarınız geçmişteki Nazi uygulamalarından farklı değil.
Germany's Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel says he is glad the campaign, which was fought so bitterly, is now over. He and German Chancellor Angela Merkel issued a joint statement saying they respected the rights of Turks to decide their constitution, but added the close result shows the extent to which Turkish society is deeply divided. The European Commission's sentiment was similar. It issued a statement saying that in view of the close referendum result and the far-reaching implications of the constitutional amendments, we also call on the Turkish authorities to seek the broadest possible national consensus in their implementation. Meanwhile, some external parties say the process wasn't fair. International observers from the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe have said the campaigns were run on an unlevel playing field.
We observed a restrictive campaign framework. We also noted a significant imbalance in the campaign.
But Turkey has responded, saying the OSCE's claims are unacceptable, saying that they came to Turkey with a prejudice.
Haddinizi bilin. Sizin hazırlayacağınız o siyasi içerikli raporları biz ne görürüz, ne duyarız, ne biliriz.
On Sunday night, President Erdogan received calls from leaders in Azerbaijan, Qatar and Palestine, congratulating him on the referendum victory. And he appears to be shrugging off outside criticism. Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Rafsa Kavakçı-Khan. She's an MP from the ruling AK Party, and still with us is political analyst Ceren Kenar and EU expert Emre Gönen. Rafsa, congratulations, a narrow victory. And while you were celebrating, did this OSCE report take some of the shine off it? Because it's scathing. I've been going through it, and they had a lot of criticisms about the entire process of this referendum. Are you taking those seriously, and has it taken the shine off the celebrations?
It has not taken the shine off, but of course we do have concerns whether it was a biased report or if it was an objective report or not. We don't know what facts that they looked into, so we're waiting to see the actual finalized report in order to make a decision.
Okay. Let me ask you, Ceren, the OSCE report, should the government be taking it seriously?
Of course. I mean, I think the elections, I think the Yes campaign had much more resources than the No campaign. But still, the elections were free. And this is one thing that Turkey is very good at. We have been having free and fair elections since 1950, and we have to keep up with this tradition. In that sense, I think, of course, the government should take this criticism quite seriously.
Yeah. Emre Gönen, how should the government now deal with its relationship to the West, if you like, the EU, the United States and others, now that the referendum is done, because there was a lot of rhetoric beforehand?
The rhetoric before it was not very healthy, to say the least. And we have three major, if I may, issues that obliges us to mend our relations with the European Union. The first issue is the migrant issue, and the only really serious cooperation we could implement with the European Union for the last 5 to 6 years. It's vital for Turkey, it's vital for them. And it concerns the integration of 3 million of migrants in Turkey. So it's a huge project, and it will be a first. And it will be a very healthy cooperation if it continues. Second, we have to modernize the customs union. It has been completed 21 years ago. So online trading did not exist at the time. So the framework, the regulatory framework has to be modernized, and we have to deal with the European Union on this issue, and lots of understanding from one part and the other are necessary. And third, and not the least, we need investments. We have started to get direct foreign investments in 2005 with the starting of the negotiations. And in one and a half year, we have attracted more foreign direct investment than the whole history of Turkish Republic. So adding up these three major issues, we have to somehow mend better our relationship with the European Union. But if we really are going to organize a referendum whether the death penalty should be reinstated or not, that will be a certain break and a certain glaciation period between Turkey and the EU. and it would be a really bad idea.
Okay, so you brought up a bunch of points. Let's separate them out. Let's take the death penalty and EU accession possible referendums and leave that for just a couple minutes' time. But let me ask, Rafsa Kavakçı, you were nodding in agreement when Emre Gönen was saying these are the things that we need to do. A cynical view is that the government decided to take a tough stance on the likes of Germany and the Netherlands and talk tough, and these are fascists and so on, to get votes for the referendum. Now that it's done, conciliation. Is that unfair?
That's very unfair. I mean, to say that the government intentionally wanted to bring tension to our relationship doesn't make sense. And as far as going back to the point and how the relations got tense and got to this point, yes, there wasn't fair coverage of the Yes campaign in Europe. We saw that European papers were printing Turkish no campaigns in Turkish. And the fact that Madam Minister, Dr. Fatma Betül Sayan Kaya, the way she was treated in Europe, I mean, I believe in equality, I believe in gender justice. However, it was only 3 days after International Women's Day, and this got absolutely almost no coverage in the international media, how a woman minister was mistreated according to going against international agreements and going against international etiquette, to say the least.
So before I get all your views on 2 possible upcoming referendums, or 1, we don't know right now. Before I get that view, 51%, or just over 51%, were you surprised by that? Because it seems as if the Yes camp expected much more, and there was a slight disappointment that the win was such a narrow win last night.
Frankly, yes, I was expecting a higher yes vote. I had no doubt that it would come out at yes, but from the first day till the last second until the election day, I said this, and all my colleagues also said that we would respect whatever comes out. So this is an important thing for us to reevaluate, and I think we have a big task ahead of us to explain to the Turkish public that this actually is a system that strengthens the parliament, gives it the authority to investigate the president and take him to the higher court.
Will the judiciary be absolutely impartial? Because that's one of the concerns.
Absolutely, because a number of articles within the constitutional change is related with the judiciary.
Okay, Ceren, looking ahead towards 2019, it seems unlikely that the government will call for elections now. I mean, you wouldn't call for elections if you just won 51%, right? But there's talk of death penalty referendum, EU accession talks, cancellations, referendum. Is that a good idea?
I don't expect any referendum on the capital punishment, but the thing is that, as you said, I mean, this was the referendum for the presidential system, but who will be the president with those powers? We don't know yet. So 2019 elections will be critical for Turkey and, of course, critical for Mr. Erdogan. AKP has been, I mean, one needs, this is a clear success. This is a clear success of AKP and Mr. Erdogan. He won 12 successive elections. However, as you pointed out, it's a narrow win. And it seems that especially the urban conservative votes of AKP is in decline. So the question is whether AKP will manage to garner its support till 2019. That's a critical question. And one needs to understand that Turkey is a part of EU, not only politically, but also economically. So economy is key for the elections. And one of the challenges waiting for this government is not only to fix the economy and, you know, keep a stable, stable Turkey, but also it will need to convince its own base that it can provide a better future and it can deliver what it has been promising so far.
Okay, this is the worst part of my job because I have to thank all of you now, even though I wanted to hear much more from all of you. But it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Emre Gönen, Ceren Kenar, Rafsa Kavakçı, and of course earlier the CHP MP Utku Çakırozer. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you. So many questions, So few answers right now, including the point that, everybody has to work hard for votes right now, which I guess is very encouraging in terms of Turkish democracy looking forward. Will we see referendums in the next couple of years? Well, it's never boring here as a foreigner, I'll have to tell you. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. It's always a pleasure having you. Stay with us. More news continues here on TRT World. Bye-bye.
TRT World, our sources, TRT World sources are telling us that the Yes campaign have won.
Victory for the Yes campaign was narrow, and Turkish voters are split.